Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Speak Smart podcast. Today, we're diving into something pretty cool, using global issues as a springboard for learning English.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a really unique approach
I can imagine.
because it's not just about vocabulary and grammar.
Right.
It's about engaging with these important topics,
Yeah.
in a meaningful way.
In a way that matters.
Exactly. So we'll be exploring, climate change, poverty, global health issues that affect us all,
Of course.
but through the lens of this podcast designed for English language learners.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah,
So you're kind of killing two birds with one stone.
exactly.
You're learning about these global issues
Yeah.
and improving your English at the same time.
Exactly. What's fascinating is how this approach tackles two things at once.
Yeah.
Building language skills
Yeah.
and developing a deeper understanding of the world.
Sort of win-win.
It is a win-win.
You get to expand your vocabulary.
Yeah.
Learn about different cultures. Right. And all while, becoming more fluent in English.
Okay, so let's unpack how this works.
All right. So think about it. When you're passionate about a subject, you're more motivated to learn.
Right?
This podcast uses global issues as that hook,
Okay.
drawing listeners in with compelling content
Okay.
while naturally exposing them to new vocabulary and different speaking styles.
So it's like learning English with a purpose,
Exactly.
which makes the process more engaging.
Way more engaging.
Absolutely.
Because you're not just, memorizing words from a textbook.
Yeah.
You're actually using them to discuss things that you care about.
Right. It's not just about rote memorization.
Yeah.
It's about connecting with ideas
Uh-huh.
and expressing yourself on matters that truly matter.
Right. And that makes it so much more meaningful
Yeah.
and memorable.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So let's dive into our first global issue, climate change.
Okay.
This is a topic we hear a lot about,
All the time.
but it can be complex.
It can be, yeah.
So this podcast breaks it down in a way that's accessible for English learners.
Oh, that's great.
And what's interesting is they don't just explain what climate change is.
Right.
They explore its impact on different cultures and societies around the world.
That's really important because, climate change doesn't affect everyone equally.
Exactly. It intersects with
Yeah.
social, economic,
Right.
and political issues,
Yeah.
making it a truly global challenge.
Absolutely a global challenge.
One of the key things the podcast does is clarify the difference between climate and weather.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get this confused.
A lot of people do.
Yeah.
Weather is what we experience day to day, right?
Yeah.
It's the sunshine, the rain, the snow.
Ah.
But climate is the long-term average of weather patterns over a large area.
So if a region is generally hot and humid,
Yes,
that's its climate.
exactly.
And climate change means those long-term patterns are shifting.
Precisely. And the primary driver of this shift is global warming, which is the increase in Earth's average temperature.
Okay. And we know that's largely caused by the greenhouse effect.
Uh-huh.
But I've always found that concept a bit tricky.
Yeah, it can be a little bit tricky. Well, think of it like this. Certain gases in the atmosphere, where carbon dioxide acts like a blanket around the Earth,
Uh-huh.
trapping heat from the sun.
So that's the natural greenhouse effect, which keeps our planet warm enough to support life.
That's exactly right.
But the problem is,
So here's the problem.
human activities are pumping way too much of these greenhouse gases into the atmosphere,
Yeah, we're thickening that blanket.
thickening that blanket and causing the planet to warm up more than it should.
Way more.
And that's what leads to all the consequences we hear about.
Exactly.
Melting ice caps,
Right.
rising sea levels,
Yeah.
extreme weather events.
Extreme weather events, exactly.
And the podcast goes into detail about these consequences,
Uh-huh.
using vivid language and real-world examples that are easy for English learners to grasp.
That's great because, it's like much more real for them.
For example, they talk about how rising sea levels are displacing coastal communities,
Right.
forcing people to leave their homes and relocate.
It's happening already.
Yeah, and they explain how extreme weather events like droughts and floods
Yeah,
are impacting food security, leading to shortages and higher prices,
exactly.
particularly in vulnerable regions.
Especially in vulnerable regions, yeah.
It's really eye-opening to see how climate change is interconnected with so many other issues.
It's all connected. And the podcast doesn't shy away from the human impact either.
Right.
They share stories of people whose lives have been directly affected by climate change.
Like farmers struggling to grow crops
Right.
due to unpredictable weather patterns.
Right.
or families forced to migrate because their homes are no longer safe.
Exactly. And those stories, make the issue much more tangible and relatable for listeners, helping them connect on an emotional level.
It's one thing to understand the science of climate change, but it's another to hear about its real-world consequences on individuals and communities.
And that's what makes this podcast so effective as a learning tool.
Yeah.
It goes beyond the dry facts and figures and brings the issue to life.
It can be easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of climate change.
It can be, yeah.
But the podcast also explores solutions.
They do.
They highlight both individual actions and collective efforts that can help mitigate the impacts.
That's important. Right.
For example, they talk about reducing our carbon footprint by using public transportation, conserving energy, and making sustainable choices in our daily lives.
All those little things add up.
They also discuss the importance of advocating for policy changes
Right.
that promote renewable energy, protect forests, and hold corporations accountable for their emissions.
Accountability is key.
So it's about both individual responsibility and systemic change.
Exactly. You need both.
Right. And the podcast emphasizes that everyone has a role to play, no matter how small.
Every little bit helps.
What I find encouraging is that they focus on solutions that are accessible and achievable. For English learners, like starting a community garden,
That's a good word.
volunteering for environmental organizations, or simply spreading awareness about the issue.
Yeah, just talking about it.
Yeah.
Raising awareness is huge.
They even provide tips on how to talk about climate change effectively in English, which empowers learners to become advocates for change.
That's fantastic because, it gives them the tools to actually go out there and make a difference.
That's such a cool way to tie language learning to real-world action.
It is. It's very cool.
It shows how mastering English can be a tool for making a difference in the world.
Absolutely. It opens doors.
Now, climate change is just one of the global issues. This podcast explores, let's move on to another pressing topic, poverty.
Okay. Poverty.
This is an issue that's often oversimplified,
Yeah. It's often seen as just a lack of money.
but the podcast digs deeper, revealing its complexities and challenging common misconceptions.
That's important to do.
Yeah, I think a lot of people view poverty as simply a lack of money, but it's so much more than that.
It's so much more than that. It's about a lack of resources, opportunities, and power.
It's about systemic barriers that prevent people from accessing education, healthcare, and decent work.
Right. And those barriers can be really hard to overcome.
And it's about the interconnectedness of these factors, creating a cycle that can be incredibly difficult to break.
A vicious cycle.
The podcast does a great job of illustrating this cycle, showing how poverty can be passed down through generations, impacting families and communities for years to come.
And it's not just a local issue either.
They also highlight the global nature of poverty,
Exactly.
showing how it's influenced by factors like colonialism, trade policies, and conflict.
It's a global issue with global causes.
What I find particularly insightful is how the podcast connects poverty to other global issues we've discussed, like climate change.
Right.
Yeah, they explain how climate change is exacerbating poverty
Makes sense.
by displacing communities, disrupting agriculture, and increasing the frequency of natural disasters.
It's like a double whammy.
It's a stark reminder of how interconnected these issues are.
Yeah.
And how they disproportionately affect the most vulnerable populations.
Absolutely. The people who are already struggling the most.
Now, talking about poverty can be sensitive,
It can be. Yeah.
especially for English learners who may have personal experiences with it.
Yeah. It can be a very personal issue.
But the podcast approaches the topic with sensitivity and respect,
Good.
using language that's both accurate and accessible.
That's important to find that balance.
They also make a conscious effort to amplify the voices of people who have lived experience with poverty,
Yeah.
sharing their stories and perspectives.
That's so important because it gives a human face to the issue.
This not only provides valuable insights, but also humanizes the issue, reminding listeners that poverty is not just a statistic.
Right.
It's about real people facing real challenges.
Real people with real struggles.
And importantly, the podcast doesn't just dwell on the problem, it also explores solutions.
Oh, good.
They highlight a wide range of initiatives aimed at alleviating poverty, from microfinance programs and educational initiatives to healthcare access and social safety nets.
It's a multifaceted issue, so it needs a multifaceted approach.
And they emphasize that there's no one-size-fits-all solution. It requires a multifaceted approach that addresses the root causes of poverty and empowers individuals and communities to create a better future.
And that empowerment is crucial.
I think what makes this podcast so valuable for English learners is that it provides them with the language and the knowledge to engage in meaningful conversations about poverty.
Right. It gives them the tools to talk about it, to understand it, and to do something about it.
They can use their newfound skills to advocate for change,
Mm-hmm.
volunteer for organizations working on the front lines, or simply raise awareness about this critical issue.
Yeah. Every little bit helps.
It's about empowering learners to become informed and engaged global citizens.
Informed, engaged, and empowered. That's a great combination.
And that's what makes this approach to English learning so powerful. It goes beyond the classroom and connects language to real-world issues that matter.
It's not just about learning the language, it's about using the language to make a difference.
It's about equipping learners with the tools to understand the world, to communicate effectively, and to make a positive impact.
And that's what it's all about.
And on that note, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll delve into another critical global issue, health.
Okay.
We'll explore the challenges facing communities around the world, the solutions being implemented, and how English learners can use their language skills to contribute to a healthier future for all.
Looking forward to it.
Join us then for the second part of our deep dive.
So welcome back to our deep dive into global issues and how exploring them can enhance your English skills. We've already covered climate change and poverty, but now let's shift our focus to another crucial area, global health.
It's a topic that affects everyone, regardless of language or location. And what I find fascinating is how this podcast we're examining uses health issues to not only teach English, but also to raise awareness and inspire action.
It's a brilliant approach because it taps into something universal, the desire to be healthy and to live in a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
Okay, so what are some of the specific health challenges that the podcast addresses?
Well, they cover a wide range, from infectious diseases like malaria and tuberculosis to chronic illnesses like heart disease and diabetes.
And they even delve into mental health, which is often overlooked but equally important.
Absolutely. They emphasize that health is not just about the absence of disease, it's about overall well-being, both physical and mental.
And what I appreciate is how they break down complex medical terminology into language that's easy for English learners to understand.
Right. They use clear explanations, real-world examples, and even analogies to make the information accessible and engaging.
For example, when discussing the spread of infectious diseases, they compare it to a domino effect, showing how one case can lead to another and another, creating a chain reaction across communities and even countries.
That's a great way to illustrate the interconnectedness of global health. What happens in one part of the world can have ripple effects everywhere else.
And they don't shy away from the harsh realities of health disparities, showing how access to healthcare, nutrition, and sanitation varies drastically depending on where you live.
Unfortunately, that's the reality. They highlight the fact that millions of people around the world still lack basic healthcare services, clean water, and adequate food, leading to preventable illnesses and premature deaths.
It's a stark reminder of the inequalities that exist and the urgent need for action.
But the good news is the podcast doesn't just present the problems, it also explores the solutions.
Oh, good. So they're not just painting a bleak picture. They're actually offering hope and showing what could be done.
Exactly. They showcase innovative programs and initiatives that are making a real difference in communities around the world.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Well, for instance, they discuss community health worker programs that train local people to provide basic healthcare services in areas where doctors and hospitals are scarce.
That's a great idea, using local knowledge and resources to address health needs.
They also highlight the importance of vaccination campaigns in preventing the spread of infectious diseases and saving countless lives.
Vaccinations are one of the most effective public health interventions we have.
Absolutely. And they delve into the role of technology in improving healthcare access, such as telemedicine platforms that connect patients in remote areas with specialists in urban centers.
Technology can really bridge the gap and bring healthcare to those who need it most.
It's amazing to see how technology is being used to address health challenges.
It's inspiring to see how people are coming up with creative solutions to address these complex health challenges.
And the podcast does a great job of highlighting the importance of global cooperation in tackling these issues.
Because these are not issues that any one country can solve on its own.
Exactly. They emphasize that no one country can solve these problems alone. It requires collaboration, resource sharing, and a commitment to working together for the common good.
It's about recognizing that we're all in this together.
They discuss the role of international organizations like the World Health Organization in coordinating global health efforts, setting standards, and providing support to countries in need.
International cooperation is essential for addressing global health challenges.
And they encourage listeners to get involved, to become advocates for global health equity, and to support organizations working to improve health outcomes for all.
So it's not just about learning about these issues, but also about taking action and making a difference.
Now, one of the things that makes this podcast so effective for English learners is that it provides them with the language tools to discuss these issues.
Right. It's not just about the content. It's also about the language skills.
They introduce vocabulary related to health, medicine, and public health.
So learners are expanding their vocabulary in a relevant and meaningful context.
They present different perspectives on health challenges and solutions, exposing listeners to a variety of speaking styles and arguments.
That's great for developing critical thinking skills and learning how to express your own opinions.
And they even provide tips on how to have respectful and productive conversations about sensitive health topics.
Because these are often topics that can be emotionally charged.
So it's not just about learning English, it's about developing the communication skills to engage in meaningful dialogue about global health.
And that's what makes this approach so powerful.
Yeah.
It connects language learning to real-world issues that matter.
It empowers learners to not only understand the world, but also to contribute to making it a healthier place.
Now, speaking of making a difference, the podcast also highlights the importance of individual actions in promoting global health.
It's not just about what governments and organizations can do, it's also about what we can do as individuals.
They emphasize that even small changes in our daily lives can have a ripple effect.
Like what kind of small changes?
Well, for example, they encourage listeners to practice good hygiene, like washing their hands frequently and covering their coughs and sneezes to prevent the spread of germs.
Basic hygiene practices can go a long way in preventing the spread of disease.
They also discuss the importance of making healthy choices, like eating a balanced diet, getting regular exercise, and avoiding smoking and excessive alcohol consumption.
Taking care of our own health is an important part of promoting global health.
And they encourage listeners to get vaccinated, not only to protect themselves, but also to protect others in their community.
Herd immunity is crucial for protecting those who are most vulnerable.
They even provide tips on how to advocate for healthier environments, such as supporting policies that promote access to clean water sanitation and nutritious food. It's a reminder that we all have a role to play in creating a healthier world.
And that our individual choices combined with collective action can make a real difference.
What I find particularly interesting is how the podcast connects global health to other issues we've discussed, like poverty and climate change.
It all ties together. It's all interconnected.
They explain how these issues are interconnected and how addressing one can have positive impacts on the others.
It's a holistic approach.
For example, they discuss how investing in education and economic opportunities can help lift people out of poverty, which in turn can improve their health outcomes.
Poverty and health are closely linked.
They also highlight how climate change is affecting global health by increasing the spread of infectious diseases, exacerbating malnutrition, and displacing communities, making them more vulnerable to health risks.
Climate change is a major threat to global health.
It's a reminder that these issues are not isolated. They're interconnected and require holistic solutions.
We need to address these issues in a comprehensive and integrated way.
And the podcast does a great job of presenting these complex connections in a way that's both informative and engaging.
They've done their research and they know how to present complex information in an accessible way.
It's clear that they've put a lot of thought into making this information accessible and relevant for English language learners.
They're not just talking over people's heads, they're meeting them where they are.
They've created a valuable resource that not only helps learners improve their language skills, but also empowers them to become more informed and engaged global citizens.
Informed, engaged, and empowered, that's a winning combination.
And that's what makes this approach to English learning so unique. It goes beyond simply acquiring language. It's about developing a deeper understanding of the world and our place in it.
It's about connecting with the world on a deeper level.
It's about using language as a tool for communication, for connection, and for making a positive impact.
Language is a powerful tool.
And on that note, let's take a moment to reflect on what we've learned so far. We've explored climate change, poverty, and global health, and we've seen how these issues are interconnected and how they affect people around the world. But we've also seen how people are working to address these challenges, to find solutions, and to create a better future. And we've learned how English language learners can use their skills to join this effort to become advocates for change and to contribute to a healthier, more just, and sustainable world. Now, in the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore some specific examples of how this podcast empowers English learners to take action. We'll look at how they provide learners with the tools to have difficult conversations, to challenge assumptions, and to speak up for what they believe in. We'll also examine how they encourage learners to connect with others, to build community, and to use their voices to make a difference. Join us then as we wrap up our exploration of this innovative approach to English learning and global engagement. Welcome back to our deep dive. We've been talking about this podcast that uses global issues to help people learn English.
Yeah, it's a really cool concept, using things like climate change and poverty as a way to learn new words and phrases.
Exactly. And what we're going to focus on now is how this approach actually empowers English learners to take action.
Because knowledge is one thing, but actually doing something with that knowledge is a whole other level.
It's one thing to understand these issues, but it's another to feel equipped to actually do something about them.
Right. It's about moving beyond awareness and into action.
And that's where this podcast really shines. It goes beyond raising awareness and provides listeners with practical tools to make a difference.
So they're not just giving you information, they're giving you the tools to actually use that information.
Exactly. It's not about passive learning. It's about active engagement.
It's about empowering learners to be agents of change.
And one of the ways they do this is by helping learners develop the confidence and the skills to have difficult conversations.
Because let's be real, talking about things like climate change or poverty can be tough, especially if you're not a native English speaker.
There can be a fear of saying the wrong thing or not being understood or of encountering resistance.
And that can be really intimidating.
But this podcast provides learners with the language and the strategies to navigate these conversations effectively.
So they give you the words and the tools to express yourself clearly and confidently.
They offer tips on how to frame your arguments, how to use evidence to support your points, and how to respond to counter-arguments respectfully.
It's about having those tough conversations in a way that is productive and respectful.
They also emphasize the importance of active listening, of seeking to understand different perspectives, and of finding common ground.
It's not about winning a debate. It's about having a meaningful dialogue.
And what I find really cool is how they encourage learners to challenge assumptions, both their own and those of others.
It's about thinking critically about the information you're presented with and not just accepting everything at face value.
They prompt listeners to question the status quo, to think critically about the information they're presented with, and to consider alternative solutions.
Because sometimes the best solutions are the ones that haven't been tried yet.
And they provide a platform for diverse voices and perspectives, exposing learners to a wide range of opinions and experiences.
So you're not just getting one side of the story, you're getting multiple perspectives.
Which helps break down stereotypes and fosters a more nuanced understanding of complex issues.
It's about seeing the world through different lenses.
And by empowering learners to think for themselves, it helps them develop their own unique voice and contribute to the conversation in a meaningful way.
It's about finding your own voice and using it to make a difference.
Another key aspect of this approach is the emphasis on building community.
Because we're stronger together.
The podcast encourages listeners to connect with others who are passionate about these issues, whether it's through online forums, local groups, or volunteer organizations.
It's about finding your tribe people who share your values and your passion for making a difference.
They understand that tackling global challenges requires collective action, and that working together is far more effective than working alone.
And it's more fun to work together too.
And by connecting with others, learners not only gain support and encouragement, but also have the opportunity to learn from each other and to amplify their impact.
It's a win-win for everyone involved.
The podcast also provides practical tips on how to get involved in your community, whether it's through volunteering, donating, or simply spreading awareness.
It's about finding ways to contribute that fit your skills and your interests.
They make it clear that everyone has something to offer, no matter their language level or background.
Every contribution counts, no matter how small.
And they showcase inspiring stories of individuals and groups who are making a difference, showing learners that real change is possible.
Because sometimes we need to see those stories to believe that change is possible.
So it's not just about talking about the issues, it's about taking action and being part of the solution.
It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
And the podcast equips learners with the tools and the confidence to do just that.
It's about empowering learners to be the change they want to see in the world.
What I find particularly inspiring is how they encourage learners to use their voices to advocate for change.
Because our voices have power, especially when we use them collectively.
They remind listeners that their voices matter, that they have the power to influence others, and that even small actions can make a difference.
It's about using your voice to speak up for what you believe in.
They provide tips on how to write letters to elected officials, how to organize campaigns, and how to use social media to raise awareness.
It's about using all the tools at your disposal to make your voice heard.
They also emphasize the importance of speaking up for those who are marginalized or whose voices are not being heard.
It's about being an ally and using your privilege to amplify the voices of others.
So it's about using your voice to amplify the voices of others and to create a more just and equitable world.
It's about using your voice to create a world where everyone's voice is heard and valued.
And the fact that this podcast is specifically designed for English language learners makes it even more powerful.
It's about showing English learners that they have a place at the table and that their voices matter.
It shows that learning English is not just about acquiring a skill, it's about gaining access to a global community and becoming a force for positive change.
It's about opening up a world of possibilities.
It's about empowering individuals to use their language skills, to connect with others, to share ideas, and to make a difference in the world.
It's about making the world a better place, one conversation at a time.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's clear that this podcast offers a truly unique and inspiring approach to English learning.
It's not your typical English class, that's for sure.
It's not just about memorizing vocabulary or grammar rules. It's about using language to engage with the world, to understand complex issues, and to make a positive impact.
It's about using language as a tool for good.
It's about empowering learners to become informed, engaged, and active global citizens.
It's about creating a generation of global change makers.
And it's a testament to the power of language to connect us, to inspire us, and to drive positive change.
Language is a powerful force for good.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the world of global issues and English learning.
It's been a pleasure exploring this fascinating topic with you.
And we hope you'll join us again next time for another insightful and engaging discussion on the Speak Smart podcast.
Until then, keep learning, keep speaking, and keep making a difference.
Thank you for listening to the Speak Smart podcast.